Hi there, I'm Jason T. Smith. I'm a physiotherapy entrepreneur. I lead the Back in Motion Health Group down under in Australia. And I'm on this show to talk to you about how to dismantle titles inside your organization, how to throw out that top-down linear organizational model, and to turn yourselves spherical. We call it outside in, downside up leadership. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. Let me ask you, are you committed to up-leveling your leadership? Well, are you still running a hierarchical organization, or have you flattened out the authority? Maybe you don't really like either. You're asking yourself, is there another option? Well, stay tuned, you might find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to either our LinkedIn or our Facebook page. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast on either of those platforms. If you are a new listener, a new viewer, I want to thank you for joining us. I want you to strap yourself in because we're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeart Radio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. And remember, we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to those platforms, wherever it is you tune in, rate, review, subscribe, and please share the show with everybody you know. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Philadelphia to Florida up to Washington, D.C. You can also catch us on ROKU TV, where we have over 100,000 subscribers. If you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. And I don't know if you know this, but you can also catch us on Spotify, Google Home, and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. Again, I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know that the hierarchical organization of power has come under massive criticism, and many of today's workers have no interest in being part of that. So maybe you flattened out your authority, but that's a bumpy road, right? Maybe you're asking yourself, is there another option? Well, let's find out together. My guest on this episode is Jason Smith. Jason is the driving force of a dynamic business and health thought leader. He's an award-winning entrepreneur and an acclaimed physiotherapist. He is the founder, as you'll see right behind us if you're watching on video, of Back in Motion Health Group. And he started that company back in his garage in 1999. Jason Smith now leads a team of more than 600 professionals in over 100 locations across Australia and New Zealand. He has made a career out of radically challenging the norm in pioneering fresh business paradigms. The results speak volumes. He is listed as the #2 Top Franchise Executive in 2019 by Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2013. And Back in Motion became Australia's largest and fastest growing provider of physiotherapy-related services, awarded the BRW Fast Franchise for 5 consecutive years. He's also, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together, because he's also the author of the groundbreaking book, Outside In, Downside Up Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jason Smith.
Wow, what an introduction, Dov. If only I got that every morning I came to work. It'd be a great day.
Well, we've told our previous guests that I can record that, give it to you, and you can have your wife play it every morning.
I think she would refuse to do it, but let's give it a shot anyway.
I'm pretty sure she would refuse. So would mine.
Maybe I could play it once she leaves the house, and it could be just my thing.
Just you and the dog. So I want to start off where I like to start off, which is, we're all influenced, we're all impacted, and oftentimes we look to these great figures that are famous and well known as, being a great influence on us, whether it was a Martin Luther King or a Gandhi or Churchill, whoever it was. But I often find that with great leaders, there's somebody who likely we wouldn't know or wouldn't suspect who has been a major influence on your life. Who has it been for you, Jason?
It sounds a little cheesy, but actually it was my school principal. So from from late primary school, which is grade 4 for me, right through to year 10, there was a school principal who just really captured my attention. Somebody who modeled what I thought a real man was about, who could carry a lot of authority, a lot of pressure, a lot of strain, but could still be relational. And he's been a great model for me, great leader in so many respects.
When you think about how he influenced you, is there one thing that really stands out for you? Because we don't know this guy, right?
There's a lot of attributes, but I think the striking distinction in this guy is that he never looked rattled. He never looked like he was unflappable. He just had what we would call today a level of emotional intelligence. Back then, I don't think Goldman had coined the phrase, but he just seemed to be able to carry a gravitas wherever he went. And regardless of students, parents, other teachers swirling around him, he was able to, just keep the room's attention, which is quite a remarkable attribute, really.
It is indeed. Now, in the intro, I talked about how we're very clear that the hierarchical form of business is not going to work anymore, and business is discovering that in droves. And of course, we've had from that a flattened authority. But your book goes into something quite different. And this was fascinating in our previous conversation when we chatted about you being on the show, was because as soon as you sort of talked about it not being hierarchical, I automatically went, well, is it flattened? And you said that's the most common question that you get asked around this, because that's the only thing we know. We know this polarity, which is the hierarchical leadership and the flattened leadership. You've come up with something very different in your book. You talk a lot about it. Walk us into it a little bit. Give our viewers, our listeners, a sense of what it is, because it's quite different.
Yeah. So I'm trained as a physiotherapist. At the end of the day, what do I know about business and organizational structures and corporate psychology? I just did what everybody else did, and that was set up the typical pyramid. Somebody told me when I had about 100 staff and 14 practices, you just needed to get that organizational structure right. And we did for many years have the very typical structure. And I've read and studied flat structures. I've looked at matrix management. I've looked at all of the variations of turning the pyramid upside down. There's a lot of variations on the theme out there. None of them were plug and play for us. None of them captured our entrepreneurial spirit, and I thought could unlock the potential that we were really struggling with under this traditional hierarchical model. So without having seen one done before, the team around me who were part of the creation of this, we ended up with a spherical model, a three-dimensional organizational structure that has no up, no down, no left, no right. It's a spherical model, like an orb. In fact, to have a little bit of fun with it, we call it a planetary model, because like all planets, there's moons and core and mantle, and you can have a whole lot of fun with the metaphor, but really we don't think in terms of flat, because we think it's practically ineffective, and we don't like the hierarchical linear top-down model because it suffocates talent. So we went spherical.
That's fascinating. So tell us, I mean, you know, you just pointed out there what it's not. So what is it? Because it's now you've created the intrigue, you've created the mystery. Okay, it's not that, and it's not that. So what the hell is it?
So we've given, in the spirit of creating something unique, we've given it its own name. It's called One Team. One Team is this idea that we don't have departments or, dare I say, divisions inside our business. Who would want to divide their business and their teams? We want to unite them. So we have one team in a spherical model. Now, right at the very core of this spherical model is the mission of our organization, not the boss, not the owner. You don't want to serve a man or a woman. You want to serve a mission. And there's a lot of writing out there and literature that speaks to the importance of purpose and vision and strategy. And so we don't have to repeat the ethos of all that. But the problem is it's often not at the center or the heart of people's attention. And right there, close to the very center, the mission of our organization are, of course, our people, our customers, our clients. In our case, we're a healthcare business, so it's our patients, but it's also our practitioners. And then the next layer around that, Dov, are what we call the functions of the business. Every business still needs an accounting team. They still need a sales team. They still need to have technology personnel. They need all of the HR or people and culture professionals, but we've put them in functions around the business. And there's no bosses. There's no what we call in traditional parlance, senior managers. What we have is champions, advocates, colleagues. Everybody's a colleague, and they all have dynamic role profiles fitting to two things. Number one, what they're great at, and number two, what they love. And it's not a static job description that they inherit when they join the organization. It's a living, breathing representation of their passion and their skill. And then right around the outside of this spherical structure, we have what we would call the governance and the strategy personnel. People who ordinarily in a top-down model might be making all the decisions and barking all the orders, the managers, the directors, the owners, they are sitting right around the periphery of the organization, really just facilitating the energetic, dynamic activity that's happening internally, pointing everyone back to the mission, pointing everyone back to the patients and the customers. And so they are actually almost marginalized in our model. It really is, hence the title of the book, Outside In, Downside Up. We have not just turned ourselves inside out, upside down. We've gone even more dramatic, and we have pushed traditional decision makers to the outer rim of our model in this spherical system.
It's clearly radical, and that's wonderful. But putting it from the place of our viewers, our listeners, going, yeah, it's radical, it's different. How does it work? Because, you know, I mean, you know, you're really talking a foreign language here, right? You're talking about something that's not been done. It's very different. And I want our listeners, our viewers to really grasp this. And it's what, you know, when you and I spoke about it, I was like, this is intriguing because, well, as you said, you don't come from a traditional business background. You are an entrepreneur, but your background is in health. You're very entrepreneurial. You've obviously done very well at being an entrepreneur, but you've designed something in the leadership space that is completely new. And as intriguing and fascinating as it is, to say,
does it work?
Decision made us to the outside. How the hell does it work? Tell us.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing to recognize here is we don't think of it as a corporate restructure. We don't think of it, we didn't think of it as a cultural reactivation program. In fact, inside our four walls, we called it a leadership revolution, because what we were really trying to do was unlock the possibilities of our people we weren't particularly trying to create something new or different or unique to kind of get the attention of corporate Australia or corporate America. That was irrelevant to us. This was about our own personal journey. But the question of, does it work? I mean, it might sound dramatic and dynamic in theory, but does it pragmatically work? Well, of course, the proof is in the pudding. For 15 years, we ran a traditional top-down hierarchy. And I'm not going to say it didn't work. For many years, it was certainly a facilitator for growth. As you said in the introduction, we went from a garage organization, all good businesses start in the garage, and we got to about 40 locations, a couple of hundred staff, maybe 25, 30 million in revenue. Down under, that's a big business for a boutique health organization. But it totally blocked our creativity. Our people got suffocated. The way I describe it is, it's almost like corporate elitism crept in, and the decisions were being made behind closed doors. People had to climb through the hierarchy and the bureaucracy to get their creative expression. And we started flattening out in terms of our growth, and more importantly, in terms of our excitement for the business. And so we had to do something different. 3 years after introducing our spherical model that we call One Team, we had doubled the organization. That's doubling the size of our organization in 3 years that had previously taken us 15 years to build. And we were not on a growth trajectory when we started this new leadership revolution. In fact, we were on the flattening of the curve that we all know, the sigmoid curves. And so what this did was it re-energized us. It was risky. There's no doubt about it. Lots of people told me it wouldn't work, and maybe for some it wouldn't. But in our team, there was such a hunger to do things differently. It unleashed our next season of growth. And the best way to describe this, the best way to kind of give people an understanding of how One Team's spherical organizational models could work is to think of the basic tent that we used to go camping in when you and I were boys. And if you remember, it was an A-frame tent with a big pole in the middle. I mean, that was the design. And so this looked like a great structure until you got inside the tent. You tried to roll out your sleeping bag and that pole just got in the way. All we have done with our organizational structure is put the poles on the outside, like the new telescopic poles that our new tents are made of, that there's still a structure. It's just we've made the structure almost invisible. We've put it on the periphery, and we've given people freedom of movement inside their organization to serve the mission with their creativity.
So this is fascinating. So when we look at this, I released a video just yesterday about how we will choose comfort over truth. And comfort is really the familiar. And so, like you said, you had lots of people saying, well, this is never going to work. And I would expect that. But getting people to implement. So, everybody's sycophantic to the boss. The boss is always right. Yeah, tug your forelock, shut up. But, when you go for a pint, the boss has gone mental. He's lost the plot. And he's now trying to turn us into a planetary model. Whatever this guy is smoking, I don't want any, right? So, but, they do work for the guy who signs the check. And so they go, okay, I'll go along with it. Talk to us about the resistance, because I can understand the resistance externally. That's fine. And that in itself takes a lot of chutzpah. That takes some gonads to say, I'm going to ignore what the world is saying. But internally, facing that resistance, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because there's somebody probably listening to this going, this sounds fascinating. I'm going to get this book. I want to get this book. I want to learn about this spherical model. But how am I going to get Jeff to do this? He's a traditional CFO. How am I going to get Susan to do this? She's traditional HR. How am I going to, talk to us about that part.
Jeff and Susan, they're tough audience because they have been running their corporate race a very particular way. And as you say, just because I wake up one morning with a crazy idea doesn't particularly compel them. I think two things really helped me in inciting this revolution inside our own organization. Number one, there was already a high level of dissatisfaction with the current structure. We had been battling under this organizational model for a couple of years, and people were generally feeling like it was getting in the way. The structure had, this traditional top-down model had actually inhibited them from the freedoms that they were saying they wanted to exercise. So in many respects, I was opportunistic. I was seeing that they wanted change. They just didn't know what the new should look like.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing was I thoroughly involved them in the creative process. Right. And it took us over a year. So anyone who thinks this is just a flick of a switch is underestimating, I think, the journey you want to go through if you want to start a revolution. And so we spent over a year doing workshops. We had consultants come through. We had lots of those whiffle sessions, which is what I feel like expressing. There were tears. There was a bit of anger. We stopped just short of blood on the walls in lots of our meetings. But this is the process of wrestling and giving birth. I mean, labor's not pretty.
No.
This is giving birth to a new idea. And the risk was high. I mean, we detitled the organization overnight. So the career professionals who didn't have the security of owning the business and, were trying to build a resume and make sure that this was a stepping stone to something else, overnight, their title evaporated. And with that, their organizational authority got dismantled. Mm-hmm. And so it was a big risk. But it was also a big risk for me. And so when we shared the fact that we were all taking a risk, I think it helped us glue together some real intention around this. And there were heart-stopping moments. Sure. I think in fairness, not to create this illusion that it was all, just a romantic or fairy tale story. I mean, there are a couple of general managers in our business who we had to, as we say, release to a new adventure because they did not have the heart for it. Right? They didn't have the heart for it. But that's okay. The mission has to be bigger than any man or any woman. And so it was an inflection point in our story. We released a few people. I was really pleased that 3 years after introducing our one team model, the far majority, I'm talking the high 90 percentile of our team who helped create this, was still flourishing inside the organization under this model that people said couldn't work.
So how long have you been applying the model into your business?
2013 we started, so we're in our 6th year, and we're on to version 4.0, Dov. So anyone who thinks it's a set and forget, they're again misunderstanding. This is an evolution.
Right.
We call it an ecosystem, a living ecosystem of highly collaborative, self-led, peer accountable colleagues. That's really the one sentence definition. It's not about a structure, it's about a mindset. It's about a heart posture. And if we have highly collaborative, peer accountable, self-led colleagues who are doing what they're good at and what they love, I don't care what shape the structure looks like on paper. I just care that we're fulfilling our commitments and getting this mission done.
Yeah, I love it. So there's two things that come up there. First of all, the reason I asked you how long it's been in action is because the number one issue for companies as we record this is talent, keeping top talent, right? So what have you found as regards talent retention since in the 6 years that this has been up and running? I know you left some people, had to release some people in the beginning, but in the context of in that 6 years, I'm assuming you had new people come in as well. What has been your talent retention? Yeah,
our talent retention is good, and I'll tell you why. Under this model, they get to choose their own adventure. Mm-hmm. They get to design their own career path in an ordinary top-down model where the job descriptions are predefined, the org chart is prescriptive, and you've just about got to spike someone's drink to move up the tree. Not in the spherical model, because there's no promotion or demotion. There's just your own personal ambition and intention of how you want to add more value to the whole. And so we create limitless possibilities. For the right people, that's an exciting adventure. That's what we call the intrapreneur, right? Not the entrepreneur. It's the people inside an organization who can find their own way and create a path. And so that retains good people. Now, there's a sticking point. The sticking point is, at some stage, it's inevitable, they're going to want to move into a new challenge, a new opportunity outside our organization. And so we just agree that at that point, we will do our best to describe in more conventional terms the roles, the titles, the job profile that they carried inside our business, so that it's translatable to the outside world. It's actually not that hard to get around. And
right.
So once we help people understand that that's not going to limit your next step, actually we retain people very, very well. And of course, they get to earn what they think is fair. We have, like in professional sport, a salary cap system. So, you know, there's this principle of equity that we have built into one team that says we're all colleagues. You know, what's more meaningful in the body? The thumb, the little toe, the nose, the ears, the heart, the brain. Like we're all interdependent. This is true collaboration. We might not all contribute the same. It's not equality, but we want fairness, which is equity. And we get the teams of peers to get together and determine what they think they should get paid within this salary cap. And so these guys have limitless job profiles, within reason, limitless earning potential, because they're the ones creating the size of the pie. And for the right people, who would want to go work anywhere else?
Yeah, that's very cool. So you brought something up that I want to come into, because again, it's part of the flat system that I, as a consultant, I constantly hear companies struggle with. And they want it, they know they have to have it, but it's very elusive, and that is the illusion of peer accountability. I call it an illusion because invariably most companies don't know that you can actually set something up that's a peer accountability system, and they kind of like, well, you know, you report to Bob and Bob reports to you.
Yeah.
Tell us how, because it's part of your system. Tell us how you do this peer accountability and how it works.
I'm so glad you raised that, because in our leadership revolution, we set 10 culture commitments, and one of them is explicitly peer accountability. Without it, it doesn't work. You call it an illusion. We call it the holy grail of leadership. It's like a unicorn, you know, it's the pot of the gold at the end of the rainbow, because a lot of people talk and write about it, but you show me someone who lives it. Mm-hmm. So in our culture, we talk about peer accountability as being the best in me, bringing out the best in you.
Okay.
The best in me brings out the best in you. So I have to brave up. I have to have candid conversations. I know that when it's high stakes, highly emotive, that I'm going to have to be at my best if I'm going to call out my peers. But the way we do it is essential, with respect, but candor. And if I can bring out the best in me, which is braving up to have those tough conversations and calling you out, then I'm going to get the best from you, which means all boats rise on this tide. And so this is the ethos of peer accountability. And the way we do it is with mostly total transparency. There is no secret documents. There's no closed door meetings. There's you know, we publish pay rates right across the organization. There's the minutes of any meeting that you can't attend are widely open. So if somebody's got an action that they're committed to, anybody and everybody can hold them to account. This is trying to make this the new normal, including me. So Dov, I will sit down in a meeting, and my peers, my colleagues will say to me just as much as anybody else, Jace, you were meant to have done X and Y. And this is the culture we want to have. It's safe, but it's not easy. It's this idea that we have to be grown-ups. And you know what? I've got 4 kids, all at school. And I talk to my kids about peer accountability. When I take them off to grandma's and my wife and I take off for the night, I say to them, hold each other accountable. We have a family code. Don't let your little brother or your big sister behave in a way that's going to embarrass our family. Don't wait for grandma to tell them off. Hold each other to account. And I think this is the same principle.
Absolutely.
And you know what?
Beautiful.
It makes management redundant when people hold each other accountable as peers.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Now, your business now is a franchise, and you offer franchise. As a Pommy from Australia, I lived in Australia. I know that tall poppy syndrome is definitely was a huge issue, and from what I gather from my Australian friends, it still is an issue. And the idea of being part of a franchise, you might as well say you're joining a cult, because I actually remember people referring to franchises as business cults. So, and you won, the fastest growing franchise. You won all these awards around franchising. Talk to us about, because again, this spherical model of business is potentially blasphemous in a hierarchy world, weird and wonderful to a flat world. And then on top of that, you've got this, and you're doing franchise. Come on. What are you doing here? Upside down crosses? What's going on?
I sort of made a career out of being controversial, I guess.
You think?
I was 22 years of age when we started our small practice from the garage in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. And I remember getting a phone call way back then from the intelligentsia of our profession, the powers to be of our peak body, who are our regulators. And they said, we do not support you running a practice from home. You're too young. You've got no experience. It's unprofessional. You have no idea what you're doing. And way back then, I got the first taste of what it means to kind of disrupt the normal. And it's scary. I'm not telling you I like it. I don't like being controversial, but I got to tell you, I hate less doing what everybody else is doing, or I hate more doing what everybody else is doing and getting nowhere. And so being disruptive is almost the necessity if you want to move forwards. And so franchising, it was the dirty F word for the first 10 years of our journey. In fact, we would not talk about franchising. We would talk about being a health group. We would talk about our franchisees being their own practice directors. We would do everything we could to eliminate the word franchise from our vocabulary because people had a visceral reaction to it. You can't franchise healthcare. It's a services-based industry. But you know what? I think we're all over it now. I still go to conferences and share our story and keynote speak and whatnot, and people come up to me and say they still don't think franchising is going to work. And I kind of just shake my head and figure the world's always going to have naysayers. There's always going to be both, yin and yang in it all. So, but as to whether it's a cult, you're exactly right. Because think about the word cult. Where do we get the word culture? And so what we're really trying to create here is a community of people who feel like they belong, they get their identity, there's systemized, proven strategies, and we succeed together. And strip religion and the negative aspects of a cult out. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, we do want our people to feel like they belong.
Absolutely. And
we are stronger together than we are if we act independently. And so in Australia, the tall poppy syndrome is alive and well. And I guess we're just getting more comfortable with the uncomfortable.
So talk to us about your personal transition, because, you're trained, you became a physiotherapist. That's not something one traditionally thinks of as a business person. You're a health person. Those people tend to be motivated by helping others, around health, and they don't often, I mean, of course, some of them do, but as a generalization, they don't often thought of as being business heads, So you went into physio, you became a physiotherapist. Talk to us about your transition, because I imagine there was a bit of an inner turmoil between, a lot of people who are in the healing profession feel bad about money, right? And the people in the money world were like, yeah, well, you take care, you go get your doohickey fixed. I'm gonna make some money. So talk to us about that, bringing those two together.
Yeah, the transition was ugly, absolutely messy, and this is our 20th year under our brand, and I'm still transitioning, Dov. I'm not a businessman. I'm a physiotherapist. I happen to own a business, and I happen to operate a business, but I don't think I'm a businessman. In fact, I often describe myself as the accidental CEO, because it just was never part of my plan. In fact, I said to my wife on our wedding day, we got married young. We've been married for 23 years. I said to my wife, you can relax. I have no intention of running my own practice. I have no intention of bringing the strain of small business into our family. We both had ambitions to work cross-culturally in the developing world. My wife's an intensive care nurse, and our conviction was to work amongst the poorest of the poor. And so I don't come from any blue stock in terms of business. And so I just keep making this up as I go along. It's also my greatest competitive advantage, because I don't have a playbook that everybody else reads. I write my own. But the transition, it's tricky, because my identity kind of has zigzagged and looks like an ECG chart in terms of who I am and how I make my best contribution to the mission. But the conviction of wanting to serve the poor was a constant throughout this whole journey. And I realized actually the most effective way for us to work cross-culturally in the developing world is not to be dependent on donations from other do-gooders. It was to build our own scalable, ethical business, generate our own economic engine, and use our own resources as the means to be able to make that happen. And I am in the health profession. And when I attract like-minded people to work in our business who want to make a difference in the world, the social impact entrepreneurs of the world, then what a beautiful combination. Healthcare workers helping generate profitable resources to invest into the lives of disadvantaged communities. I mean, who would say no to that one? So that helped me in the transition. You had a
background in that though, right? When you were a kid.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that started when you were a kid.
Well, I had we talk about defining moments. It sounds cliche, but I think listeners know what we mean when we use that phrase. My life journey changed at 10 years of age when I was sitting in the brown vinyl beanbag in front of the cartoons on a Saturday morning with my toast while the rest of the family slept. And on the TV commercials that morning, I saw images for the first time in my innocent little life, starving children in Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. Bloated bellies, frail limbs, flies buzzing around their heads, them wobbling around and collapsing in the dirt. And I had absolutely no idea what was going on. Mum and Dad were asleep. And here I am trying to reconcile in my boyish heart, how come people aren't feeding them? How come their parents aren't helping them? It made absolutely no sense to me. But at that point in time, in a very dramatic and real, authentic way, I made a pledge that I wanted to make sure my life was about helping those kids. And so whether that was a doctor, a physio, a nurse, who would know? But that set me on my own mission, my own personal mission. And my wife, who's from Brazil, who's seen poverty at an extreme level, she's grown up amongst favelas and seen some of the devastation of what man can do to other man. She had a similar heart. This is actually what drew us together. And so we've made a life of wanting to invest into disadvantaged communities.
And how do you do that today?
Lots of different ways, but one of the key ways is with the workforce of Back in Motion, of which there are 600 or so. we have started our own foundation. It's called the SOS Health Foundation. It's a play on words, SOS, help, but also it stands for success or significance. And we ask professionals this question: are you just chasing personal career success, or do you want to make a difference and be significant in the lives of others? We send about 80 volunteer physios, occupational therapists, podiatrists into Indigenous communities all around Australia, closing the gap on healthcare, helping to improve the standard of living. Right throughout Southeast Asia, we've run different projects across the years. And so they're just a couple of the ways where we are trying to make sure we live out and are true to this conviction that we are some of the lucky few. And we do need to bring fairness back into our world.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And I'm really grateful that you shared that, because I think it's important for people to understand. Because again, I think that we live in polarities a lot of the time when we think that you can be successful or you can be generous, or you can only be generous when you're successful. And the truth of the matter is, I love the way Oprah put it. And she said, fame and success are magnifying things. It's a magnifying glass. If you're a tight ass and you're a mean person, you'll just be a bigger tight ass and mean person. If you're generous and you're caring and you're loving, then you'll become more so. That there'll be more hands handed out, but it will make you more of whatever it is you are. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
When you look at this now, what is it you want to, you've got your own business, you're having impact on these less fortunate individuals. You've created your foundation. You've written this model out in the book, which has become very popular in Australia. What is the message you want to get out there to our viewers and listeners? I mean, of course, we go out to 110 countries, but at the same time, in those first world big countries who've never heard of Jason T. Smith, who've never heard of Back in Motion or SOS or any of those things, what is the central message you want them to get?
Yeah. Look, I think it's less of all of the things you just listed, and most importantly, this idea that unless we live with a clear conviction, we are going to end our life with a sense, I fear, of not having fulfilled our potential and our purpose. And so conviction lies at the heart of every success story. Even if it's an accidental success like mine, I can trace it back to the roots of a clear, definable conviction. Many years ago, in fact, more than 10 years ago, I launched what's known as the Iceberg Leadership Institute. And we graduate more than 100 people every year through a program around helping them discover their personal convictions. And it's a journey. It's not like you can just decide to find it today and have it by nightfall, right? It's a process. I get that. And for some, it comes easy, and for others, it is a struggle. It's the art of war. But I just want to encourage people that their story, because this is just my story, my story is my story, and everybody has their own. I want them to pursue a clear conviction. And the difference between conviction and an idea is a conviction is something you are compelled to endure until you achieve it. You must pursue it. It is in your DNA. It's part of who you were designed to be. It's a cause that you can't put down, even if you get setbacks and knockbacks. And so that's probably my real passion of training, empowering, equipping, emerging leaders who have a conviction, because they will actually make a difference in the world around them.
I love that. Thank you. I really do. I love that. As successful as you are, and you are very successful at what you've done, as you've talked about, the process is not a straight line as people like to look at things as they're done, but forget there's all the stuff that went into it. What is one thing that you find you're still working on in yourself to make yourself a better human being, better leader, better business person?
Yeah. If I look behind me, there'd be a queue of people, Dov, my wife, my kids, most of my colleagues at work. They would all shout in unison the same thing. and that's patience. Patience. I am not a very patient person, and that's a double-edged sword. In some parts, that gives me that intolerance to not let be what is, and so it pushes me into new territory and new boundaries. But there's an ugly side to impatience, and so my mentors, and to the extent I expose myself for accountability around my peers, that would be the thing I feel I need to work on the most. Contentment is a beautiful attribute in someone. Contentment. If you meet someone who is genuinely content, that doesn't mean they're passive or lazy or they're settling for the status quo. They're just genuinely content. They're grateful for what they have and for what they're doing. It's a beautiful attribute, and I'd love to keep practicing contentment, and with that, patience, without diminishing the hunger to make a difference.
Yeah,
I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, but I find that in most of the people that I've worked with over the years who are making a dramatic difference, they are all, to some degree, in some way, shape, or form, quite impatient, but they learn compassion as opposed to complacency, and I think that we often associate complacence with contentment, and they're different. And I find that the best bridge for that is compassion. So the best bridge across it is compassion. It's like, okay, can I be compassionate with myself right now? Can I be compassionate with others right now? Yeah, this is not as fast as I'd like it, but let me be a bit of compassion, which allows me not just empathy, because empathy is the feeling, but compassion is the feeling plus the action. That's a different level, and that's I find that to be helpful to me, because I might lack a little bit of that.
I couldn't believe that's true.
I know you find that hard to believe, because I cover it up so well.
I love that idea of compassion. Many years ago, I think it was Rich DeVos who wrote a book called Compassionate Capitalism.
Yep.
And actually that phrase has stuck with me. I think it's a beautiful combination. Compassion and capitalism, not to be political, but just this idea of creating value.
Yep.
Let's define capitalism as creating value, but with compassion, I think it's the best of both worlds, because then you've got means and you've got end.
Yeah.
You've got purpose. It's wonderful.
It's been transformed into a movement by Mackey of Whole Foods, and now it's conscious leadership and conscious capitalism. And so there's a massive movement around the world. We are coming towards the end of the show, Jason. It's been a real pleasure, and I want to move into the lightning round. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right, good. What makes you cry? As in,
wow,
sadness. What will make you
cry? If I've devastated somebody else, if I know I've really hurt them and they're dear to me, and then there's no doubt there's a movie where any kids get their lives get taken, that'll turn me on.
Right.
The tears will roll unashamedly.
Yeah. And I asked the question because I think that so often leadership is dehumanized, and it's the reason I like to ask that question in my lightning round. Because every leader I've ever met who is worth their salt has no problem in saying, well, this makes me cry, right? Especially us tough blokes who, no, I can cry at the drop of a hat. I can cry at a good commercial. and it's important because it keeps me connected, which is important. What makes you cry laughing?
What makes me cry laughing?
Just totally cracks
a physical gag, not just a funny, articulate joke, but I mean the humor with comical, physical faces and antics. A good Jim Carrey impersonation is gonna make my stomach hurt.
Do you know Lee Evans, the British?
I don't.
Okay, go look at Lee.
I have to look him up.
Right, Lee Evans. You'll find him on YouTube. He's a British comedian. He's probably the funniest physical comedian, and he's absolutely brilliant. The nickname they gave him 20 odd years ago was the new norm and wisdom, right? Most people who are under 40 wouldn't even know who that is, but he's a physical comedian, and he talks about you went out and buy new shoes. He goes, you got all these new fancy leathers, and he goes, and I bought these octopus leather shoes, and he's like picks his foot, like that kind of stuff. I mean, I get it. I'm crying and laughing.
I've written it down. That I've got a big takeaway from today.
So if all you get is the Lee Evans video out of this, it was worth it. That's what's the guilty pleasure for you, mate?
Chocolate. And I am embarrassed about that one because I'm a healthcare professional. But put me in a room on my own with an unopened block of chocolate, and there'll be nothing left in 15 minutes. It's terrible. So I just can't go shopping on my own.
Is it dark or light, or does it matter?
It could be cooking chocolate. Dov, I'm just an absolute.
You're a junkie.
Yeah, exactly.
In a parallel universe, what do you do?
Oh, I'd love to be a policeman.
What?
Yes.
A Bobby?
And actually, one of my kids is pretty keen on pursuing that career, so you can tell what sort of a cheerleader I'll be in the corner for that role. But if I could live vicariously through him, I'd love to be a policeman, a copper. It's never left me from when I was a young kid. I sit on the train and I watch these policemen, and I find myself staring. It'd be a great job.
Oh my God. I don't know that I'd want to be a copper today. Not today.
Don't ruin it for me. I still want to be a copper.
Okay, you hold on to your childhood fantasy. You do your best. So, Jason, as we finish up here, I always like to finish before I get you to tell us where we can find out more about you and all your resources, I would love you to leave our viewers, our listeners, with a single piece of practical guidance, something they can go away and do right away. What would that be?
I'd want you to put your team in a room. That is your most direct peers in the workplace. I'd put them in a room, and I'd ask them to quite simply brave up and give you three things that they would love you to do differently or better. Either stop, start, or improve, or continue. Yeah. Right. Because I just think those conversations rarely happen in the upward direction. And in our culture, we don't have an up or a down or a left or a right. It's spherical, but it doesn't matter what structure you might be working in. If you invite the question, you might get some of the most crucial information that could change the way you perform in your role. What do I start? What do I stop? What do I improve? Three things. Make it completely safe for them. Give them thinking time, so it's not just a knee-jerk reaction. And then there's no judgment. There's no repercussions. It's a gift. It is a gift that if you ask for, most people will give you some insights that you'll never receive any other way.
That's a great practical exercise, and I think it might take some large kahunas for most people. But life is on the edge, and the next level of success is on the edge. The next level of getting to what it is you want to get to will not come by doing what you've normally done. It's by doing something else, and that will take courage. And I've said for years, and I believe it with every fiber of my being, that leadership is courage-based. It's relationship-based, but it's also courage-based. And you've got to be willing to have the courage, because leadership means going first, and you got to have the courage to go first in whatever it is. So that's a great piece of practical advice. Thank you so much. Please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources, including SOS and all those pieces. We'll make sure they all go in the show notes.
Yeah, great. So you'll find everything about me and all of my resources, the books I've written, the podcasts I've spoken on, the articles that I've published. You'll find all of that at jasontsmith.com.au. All of my social media handles, which I can really actively participate in, is Jason T. Smith Oz. That's AUS. And SOS Health Foundation is at soshealth.org.au.
Fantastic. Thank you. We will make sure, of course, that all of those are placed in the show notes so that you can track down Jason and find out about his book. Again, please tell the audience what the name of the book is and how to go find it.
Yep. Outside in, downside up leadership. It's a case study of our organization going from a traditional top-down organizational model, turning ourselves outside in, downside up into the spherical one team. 50 insights that we learnt along the journey. You'll find it on all of the Kindle sites in ebooks. You'll find it in all major bookstores here in Australia, online for you in America.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you, Jason. Hope you'll stay with us to the end. And for you, dear listener, remember you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to either our Facebook or our LinkedIn page and just look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. You can find out how you can hire me, Dov Barron, as a speaker or strategist for your organization by simply going to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. Be aware that the research consistently shows that even the fastest growing companies face the same challenges you do, in that they're spending a ton of money, energy, effort, time on training and developing their top talent, only have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're frustrated with investing in the training and development of your talent, only have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. You can also stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need a triple W, Matrix like the movie, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership Matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197. You get it absolutely free, and it will show you the 5 areas of leadership and where you can tap into them. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about really having the courage to get away from the hierarchical business and maybe even away from the flat business to examine an alternative, which is a spherical way to do leadership. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm Dov Barron, and I'm here to assist you in tapping into your deep greatness to reach the next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. I am out.